Stop for a moment and pay attention, because there are certain days that arrive carrying more significance than they first appear to hold, and this is one of them. The fact that you are hearing these words right now is not something to dismiss as chance. Out of everything competing for your attention, out of every distraction, every obligation, every direction your focus could have traveled, something caused you to remain here. Something beneath the noise of everyday thinking urged you not to move on. It was subtle, almost impossible to explain, yet powerful enough to interrupt your routine and bring you to this exact moment. If this message reaches you on June 19th, then there is something important you need to recognize. What is unfolding is not the result of luck, coincidence, technology, or random timing. There is a deeper movement taking place beneath the visible surface of life. A force far older than human understanding has been quietly observing your journey, witnessing every chapter that no one else fully saw. Through every private disappointment, every unanswered question, every night when you felt isolated inside your own thoughts, both the universe and God remained aware of your existence, aware of your struggle, aware of the unique path you have been walking. Before moving forward, allow yourself to become fully present. Like this video and subscribe to this channel, because what follows is not meant to be treated as background noise. These words are intended to meet a part of you that has been waiting for confirmation, waiting for clarity, waiting for a sign that what you have been sensing is real. There are moments in life when a person stands on the edge of an unseen threshold, and June 19th carries the energy of such a threshold. It is much more than another square on a calendar. Beneath ordinary appearances, it holds a distinct energetic signature, a subtle turning point that can be felt long before it can be logically explained. It is as if invisible pathways begin crossing, as if separate possibilities begin drawing closer together, creating a window through which transformation becomes possible. Certain people are naturally sensitive to these shifts, and whether you have acknowledged it or not, part of you has already noticed it. Perhaps it arrived as an unusual pressure inside your chest. Perhaps it appeared as restlessness that had no obvious cause. Perhaps it showed up as the persistent feeling that something significant is approaching, yet remains just beyond view. Whatever form it took, understand this. What you have been experiencing is not simple fear, and it is not uncertainty. It is the sensation of spiritual activation. It is the feeling that the unseen world has moved closer, that messages normally hidden beneath daily life are becoming easier to hear. Not everyone is receiving the same signals. Not everyone is being asked to pay attention in the same way. Yet somehow, this message has reached you exactly when it needed to. If you honestly examine your recent experiences, you may notice a difference between yourself and many people around you. There is an intensity within your awareness that others do not seem to share. There is a depth of perception that often leaves you feeling separate from the crowd. While others move through life focused only on what is visible, you constantly sense something operating beneath appearances. This is not accidental. Long before your current challenges emerged, long before self-doubt began questioning your worth, long before life convinced you to minimize your gifts, a different path had already been placed before you. You were never meant to move through existence in the same way as everyone else. What looked like delays were often forms of protection. What felt like isolation was frequently preparation. What seemed like confusion was sometimes the process of being shaped for a larger purpose. And now you are arriving at a point where you are beginning to recognize yourself more clearly than before. Suddenly, pieces of your story that never made sense start fitting together. Suddenly, the feeling of being different no longer appears as a flaw, but as evidence of something deeper. For a long time, you have carried an invisible burden that has been difficult to explain. At times it has appeared as sadness, with no identifiable source. At other times it has felt like emotional weight that remained even during peaceful moments. There have been occasions when you sensed truths that seemed too large for one individual to contain. The reason this experience feels so unusual is because much of what you have been carrying does not originate solely from your personal life. Those who are called often become sensitive to emotional currents extending beyond themselves. They become aware of inherited wounds, repeated family patterns, unresolved histories, and hidden pain that others refuse to acknowledge. You notice what many people overlook. You feel what many people suppress. Because of this sensitivity, there were periods when you questioned your own stability. You may have wondered why you reacted so deeply, why you sensed so much, why certain emotions seemed impossible to ignore. Yet the reality is not that something is wrong with you. The reality is that you have been operating on a level of awareness that reaches beneath the surface. Recently, another experience has likely become familiar. A strange stillness has settled over your life, not merely external silence, but an internal suspension that made everything feel paused. Momentum appeared to disappear. Direction became harder to identify. Answers seemed delayed. Progress felt slower than it should have been. There may have been moments when frustration convinced you that nothing was changing, that your efforts were leading nowhere, that somehow you had been forgotten. Yet what appeared to be stagnation was actually preparation. Life often enters a period of quiet immediately before a major shift takes place. Just before transformation arrives, there is frequently a pause where everything seems frozen. It resembles the moment before dawn when the darkness appears strongest, even though light is already approaching. That is the space you have been occupying. Not a dead end, but a waiting point. Not abandonment, but positioning. Not failure, but alignment. And this understanding becomes even more important when you consider the challenges you have faced during the past several weeks and months. None of it has been easy. The emotional pressure, the mental exhaustion, the spiritual uncertainty, all of it has been part of a much deeper process than you realized. What has been occurring is not a simple obstacle or temporary inconvenience. It has been a profound spiritual examination unfolding quietly behind the scenes of your daily life. Every emotional trigger, every difficult decision, every moment that tested your faith, your patience, and your inner strength has been contributing to that process. You have been challenged on multiple levels at once, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And as you continue forward, the reason behind those tests is about to become clearer than ever before. What if the events that once convinced you that life was working against you were actually evidence that something far greater was working for you all along? Think about the disappointments that left you searching for answers, the relationships that failed to become what you hoped they would be, the opportunities that vanished without explanation, and the moments when confusion seemed to surround every step you took. At the time, those experiences may have felt personal. They may have seemed like proof that you were being denied, delayed, or overlooked. Yet as you stand where you are today, a deeper truth is beginning to emerge. Every challenge carried a lesson hidden beneath its surface. Every ending exposed something that could no longer travel with you. Every setback revealed a truth that comfort had been preventing you from seeing. The people who disappointed you taught you where trust truly belongs. The situations that forced you to let go showed you what had already completed its purpose in your life. The struggles that seemed unfair uncovered strengths that would have remained dormant if everything had unfolded according to your plans. There is something in your current reality that your spirit has already moved beyond, even if part of you is still trying to hold on. It may be connected to a relationship, a familiar environment, a repetitive behavior, or even an outdated identity that once protected you, but no longer reflects who you are becoming. This is why a growing sense of discomfort has been impossible to ignore. Conversations that once felt natural now leave you exhausted. Places that once felt secure now seem limiting. Patterns that once brought certainty now feel strangely empty. The reason is simple. Your inner world is expanding faster than the external structures surrounding it. Your awareness is reaching beyond the boundaries that once defined you, while many aspects of your life remain unchanged. That difference creates friction. It creates the feeling that something is out of alignment, a feeling that continues to return no matter how often you try to dismiss it. Deep within that tension is a persistent invitation. It does not shout. It does not demand. Instead, it appears as a steady pull, encouraging you to move forward, to release what has become too small for your growth, and to trust a future that has not fully revealed itself. That feeling is not random uncertainty. It is direction. Even during the seasons when loneliness felt overwhelming and answers seemed impossible to find, you were never abandoned. Something larger than your immediate circumstances has always been quietly influencing the path ahead. Looking back, you can probably identify moments that once appeared disappointing but later revealed themselves as protection. You can remember situations where rejection eventually became redirection. You can recall periods when you felt completely lost, only to discover that those detours led you exactly where you needed to be. Those experiences were not accidents. They were examples of alignment, operating beyond the limits of your understanding. A greater intelligence has been guiding your journey, ensuring that even your mistakes became part of your growth. And now that guidance is becoming increasingly visible. What once felt subtle is becoming unmistakable. There comes a point on every awakening path when scattered experiences begin forming a recognizable pattern. You may not feel completely certain yet. You may still believe that parts of your story remain unresolved, yet beneath the apparent uncertainty, unseen movements are already taking place. Pieces that once seemed disconnected are finding their place within a larger design. The universe rarely reveals everything at once. Instead, it uncovers truth gradually, allowing understanding to arrive in stages. June 19th represents one of those meaningful moments when a hidden layer begins to become visible. The entire picture may not be clear yet, but something inside you already senses the shift. You feel the momentum building beneath the surface. You feel the growing certainty that events are organizing themselves in ways you cannot fully explain. This is the beginning of revelation, and once revelation begins, it continues unfolding until the truth can no longer be ignored. For a long time, signs have been appearing around you. Some arrived through recurring situations that seemed determined to repeat themselves until you learned what they were trying to teach. Others appeared through sudden endings that forced you to change direction. Some came through intuitive feelings that arrived without logical explanation. There were moments when you sensed something important but questioned yourself, moments when your inner knowing spoke clearly, yet your rational mind demanded evidence before it would listen. Looking back now, you can recognize that those impressions were never meaningless. They were messages reaching you through the language of intuition. Even when your thoughts resisted, another part of you understood exactly what was being communicated. Now those messages are becoming more direct. What was once subtle is becoming impossible to overlook. The truths you once pushed aside are asking to be acknowledged. The guidance you once doubted is becoming increasingly difficult to deny. There was also a period when your life seemed to enter a state of complete disruption. Stability disappeared. Familiar foundations shifted unexpectedly. Circumstances changed without warning. It felt as though everything dependable was being removed at the same time. The experience was unsettling because it challenged your sense of security, yet what appeared to be collapse was actually a carefully orchestrated clearing process. Anything that could not support the person you are becoming had to be removed. Structures connected to your past could not accompany you into your future. What felt like destruction was creating room for transformation. What felt like loss was making space for expansion. Something new required space to enter your life, and that space could only be created through release. At the same time, a different version of you has been quietly emerging. Perhaps you have noticed it in the way you respond to situations that once triggered strong reactions. Perhaps you have seen it in your ability to step back and observe rather than immediately react. Perhaps you have realized that certain fears no longer carry the same influence they once did. These changes may appear small, but together they reveal something significant. You are changing from the inside out. The identity built around limitation, insecurity, and self-doubt is gradually dissolving. In its place, a stronger awareness is taking shape. This process is not always comfortable because growth rarely is. Yet it is necessary. The future waiting for you requires a different level of consciousness than the one that brought you here. You are learning to carry greater responsibility, greater wisdom, and greater trust in your own inner guidance. Alongside this transformation, an energetic shift is becoming increasingly noticeable. You may experience periods of restlessness without understanding why. You may feel unusually aware of the emotions, intentions, and energies surrounding you. At times, it may seem as though your connection to the unseen dimensions of life has become stronger. These experiences can feel intense, but they are not signs that something is wrong. They are indications that your alignment is deepening. Your awareness is becoming more refined. You are learning to recognize influences and opportunities that previously escaped your attention. With each step, your ability to navigate life with clarity becomes stronger. Consider the doors that have remained closed despite your efforts. Think about the opportunities you pursued, the dreams you waited for, and the possibilities that seemed forever out of reach. It is easy to believe those doors were permanently locked, yet some opportunities cannot appear until the person approaching them is fully prepared. Certain paths remain unavailable until hesitation no longer controls your decisions. That season of preparation is reaching completion. The possibilities that once felt distant are drawing nearer. Obstacles that seemed permanent are beginning to shift. Opportunities that were inaccessible before are slowly revealing themselves. These developments are not random. They are responding to the person you are becoming. And when they arrive, recognition will happen instantly. You will feel it beyond logic. You will know it beyond explanation. As these changes draw closer, another emotion may rise alongside your excitement. Fear. Not because you are incapable, but because every meaningful transition requires leaving something familiar behind. Fear often appears when expansion becomes real. It encourages you to remain where everything is predictable. It tempts you to choose comfort over growth. It creates hesitation and fills your mind with questions about whether you are truly prepared. Yet the appearance of fear does not mean you should stop. In many cases, it is simply evidence that you are approaching the very threshold you are meant to cross. And what happens next will depend on whether you listen to limitation or trust the deeper calling that has been guiding you all along. Many people misunderstand fear. They see it as a warning to retreat, a signal that they have gone too far, or evidence that they should return to what feels familiar. But what if fear is actually appearing because you are standing closer to a breakthrough than you realize? What if the discomfort you are feeling is not proof that you are on the wrong path, but confirmation that you are approaching a moment capable of changing everything? Fear has a habit of showing up at the exact point where growth becomes real. It waits at the doorway of transformation and asks a single question: will you continue forward even when certainty is unavailable? This is the question life is placing before you now. Every experience you've lived through, every lesson, every disappointment, every awakening has been guiding you toward a decision. Not necessarily a dramatic decision that arrives with obvious signs and life-changing announcements, but a deeply important inner choice. Sometimes, the most powerful turning points happen quietly. They emerge through a new understanding, a shift in awareness, a realization that changes how you see yourself and the world around you. Yet despite their subtle appearance, these moments possess the power to redirect an entire future. You are not being pressured into anything. You are being offered an invitation. An invitation to trust what you feel before you can fully explain it. An invitation to move beyond old limitations. An invitation to align yourself with possibilities that currently exist beyond the boundaries of your present understanding. The moment you accept that invitation, something remarkable begins to happen. Life starts responding differently. Opportunities begin appearing where obstacles once stood. Insights arrive where confusion previously existed. The universe reflects the position you choose to occupy. It responds to your willingness to step forward rather than your desire to remain protected. Whether you have fully acknowledged it yet or not, you are standing at a powerful point between two versions of yourself. Behind you is the person shaped by past experiences, familiar identities, and outdated narratives. Ahead of you is the person emerging through everything you have learned. This is not merely a transition from one phase to another. It is a crossing between realities. One reality is built from who you used to believe you were. The other is built from who you are becoming. It is natural to feel conflicted while standing between those worlds. One part of you wants the comfort of familiarity. Another part of you feels drawn towards something larger, something that cannot yet be fully described. This creates the strange combination of anticipation and uncertainty that has been living inside you. It feels like standing at the edge of a vast landscape before taking the first step. There is excitement, there is curiosity, there is hesitation, yet there is also an undeniable awareness that remaining where you are is no longer an option. Thresholds are not places meant for permanent residence. They exist for one purpose: to ask you whether you are ready to move. And once you cross, the perspective you carried before can never be completely recovered, because transformation changes the way you see everything. That is why this moment matters. You did not arrive here accidentally. Every experience behind you has led to this point. Deep within you, another force has been growing stronger. It is not loud enough to dominate every thought, yet it refuses to disappear. It returns during moments of silence. It appears through intuitive flashes that seem to arrive from nowhere. It emerges as sudden understanding during ordinary moments. For a long time you may have tried to dismiss it. Perhaps logic argued against it. Perhaps fear encouraged you to ignore it. Perhaps you convinced yourself that it was only imagination because its message challenged assumptions you were not prepared to release. Yet the voice remained. The reason it remains is because it is connected to truth. Not the truth created by external expectations, but the truth that exists beneath social conditioning, beneath fear, beneath every role you have been taught to play. This inner guidance is not attempting to lead you toward convenience. It is attempting to lead you toward authenticity. And authenticity often requires confronting realities that are uncomfortable. It asks you to see beyond appearances. It asks you to release stories that no longer support your growth. It asks you to acknowledge what your spirit already knows. That process can feel disruptive because clarity often arrives by dismantling illusions. Around you, certain illusions are already beginning to weaken. At first, the changes may seem subtle. Small inconsistencies become impossible to ignore. Long-held beliefs begin to feel incomplete. Situations that once appeared stable reveal hidden weaknesses. Perspectives that once seemed unquestionable begin shifting beneath your feet. This experience can feel unsettling because illusions frequently provide a sense of certainty. Even when they are inaccurate, they offer familiarity. Yet you were never meant to remain attached to what is false. Your path requires vision. Your growth requires honesty. And honesty cannot fully emerge while illusion remains in control. As old assumptions dissolve, there may be moments when you feel temporarily uncertain about where you stand. It can feel like an empty space opening within your life. But that space is not punishment. It is preparation. It exists so something more authentic can enter. It exists so truth can establish roots where confusion once lived. It exists so alignment can replace what no longer belongs in your future. Alongside this process, you may have noticed yourself becoming less emotionally attached to certain people, situations, or patterns. This shift can be misunderstood, especially if you are used to defining love through constant involvement or emotional intensity. Yet what is happening is not emotional withdrawal. It is increased clarity. Growth changes perception. As awareness expands, you naturally begin recognizing what supports your evolution and what restricts it. You start noticing the difference between nourishment and depletion. You become capable of observing without immediately absorbing everything around you. This distance is not coldness, it is wisdom. It allows you to make choices from awareness rather than habit. It allows you to release attachments that were created by fear rather than genuine alignment. And because your future cannot carry every aspect of your past, certain connections, expectations, and patterns must remain where they belong. As this continues, a realization begins forming within you. It does not arrive with dramatic announcements or grand displays of confidence. Instead, it appears as a quiet certainty. You notice it in your reactions. Situations that once controlled your emotions lose their power. You notice it in your decisions. You trust yourself more and seek approval less. You notice it in your presence. You begin moving through life with greater intention rather than constant uncertainty. This is the awakening of personal power. Not power over others, but power within yourself. The remarkable thing is that this strength is not something newly created. It is something remembered. It has always existed beneath layers of doubt, fear, conditioning, and limitation. It has always been waiting beneath the surface, patiently waiting for recognition. Once you reconnect with it, your relationship with life begins to change. You stop approaching reality from a mindset of scarcity. You stop believing that everything important exists outside of you. Instead, you begin recognizing your role in shaping your experience. You understand that your journey is not simply happening to you. You are actively participating in its creation. This understanding naturally leads to alignment. Alignment is not achieved through force. It is not something you chase endlessly. It emerges when your choices begin matching your truth. And when that happens, life starts reflecting the change. You begin noticing subtle shifts. Situations flow with less resistance. Decisions become easier to make. Confusion loses much of its influence. Challenges still exist, but they no longer carry the same power to overwhelm you because your relationship with them has changed. Rather than forcing outcomes that do not belong to you, you learn to recognize what is genuinely aligned. Rather than clinging to expired chapters, you allow them to end. Rather than exhausting yourself trying to control every detail, you begin cooperating with the deeper movement guiding your path. And as that cooperation strengthens, you discover that what is meant for you no longer requires endless struggle to reach you. It begins moving toward you naturally, revealing that the greatest transformation was never happening around you. It was happening within you all along. When life begins moving into true alignment, it rarely arrives as perfection. Instead, it appears as a growing sense of direction, a feeling that even when every answer has not yet revealed itself, you somehow know you are moving where you need to go. Yet before the next chapter can fully open, there is one final release standing before you. One attachment remains. One layer still clings to the version of yourself that carried you through previous seasons. This is often the most challenging stage because the thing being released is not always painful. Sometimes it is familiar. Sometimes it feels comfortable. Sometimes it has become so woven into your identity that you no longer recognize it as something separate from yourself. It may be an old belief about what you deserve. It may be a connection that once served a purpose but has reached its limit. It may be a fear that quietly shaped your decisions for years. Or it may simply be an outdated version of yourself that continues to occupy space long after its purpose has ended. Whatever form it takes, understand this. The future unfolding before you cannot be fully received by the person you used to be. Something must be surrendered so something greater can enter. This is not loss, it is preparation. It is the final clearing before expansion begins. It is the last exhale before a new breath changes everything. Deep down, you can already sense that something is approaching. You may not have a name for it yet. You may not be able to explain it logically. Yet there is an unmistakable awareness growing beneath the surface. It feels like anticipation without a visible cause. It feels like standing near the ocean before a wave reaches shore. You know movement is coming even though it has not yet arrived. What is approaching is not far away. It has been developing quietly for some time. Circumstances have been arranging themselves. Lessons have been completing themselves. Pieces have been moving into position with remarkable precision. What is coming has not appeared by accident. It has been preparing to meet you at the exact moment you become capable of receiving it. The excitement you occasionally feel, the heightened awareness that seems to appear without warning, the subtle sense that something important is drawing near, none of it is imaginary. It is your spirit recognizing movement before your mind can understand it. You are not standing still, waiting for the future to arrive. You are already moving toward it, just as it is moving toward you. This is why awareness matters so much right now. Certain periods of life carry greater significance than others. Some opportunities arrive only once. Some turning points create changes that cannot be reversed. What is taking place around you is not simply another transition. It is the closing of one cycle and the emergence of another. The space between them is becoming smaller. The old chapter is losing its influence. The new chapter is strengthening its presence. You may still believe there is unlimited time to decide. You may still think you can wait for another confirmation. Yet the truth is that confirmation is already here. The call you have been asking for is happening now. When the universe becomes this clear, it is no longer requesting your attention. It is preparing you for movement. And once this next phase gains momentum, events may unfold far more quickly than you expect. That is why your presence is required. That is why your awareness must sharpen. The choice being formed right now matters more than it first appears. As this shift deepens, another experience may emerge. You may begin noticing that your connection with certain people feels different. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly may now seem strained. Shared interests may no longer create the same sense of belonging. You may find yourself observing situations from a perspective that those around you cannot fully understand. This does not mean something is wrong. It means you are changing. Growth alters perception. As your awareness expands, your relationship with the world naturally transforms. Some people may attempt to guide you back toward familiar ways of thinking, not because they wish to harm you, but because familiar realities feel safer to them. They cannot yet see what you see. They cannot yet feel what you feel. And in those moments you will discover that the real choice is not between yourself and others. It is between comfort and alignment, between remaining where you are understood and becoming who you were meant to become. The path of growth often requires walking through territory that others cannot yet recognize. There may be moments when that reality feels lonely. There may be days when silence feels heavier than usual. You may even wish someone could completely understand the changes taking place within you. Yet what feels like loneliness is often a sacred form of preparation. It creates room for deeper self-awareness. It allows your own voice to become louder than outside opinions. It teaches you to trust yourself rather than relying on constant reassurance from others. This is not abandonment, it is elevation. It is life creating the conditions necessary for you to build strength from within. As this process continues, something remarkable begins happening. You realize that solitude and isolation are not the same thing. You discover that beneath the silence there has always been guidance. You discover that you have never truly been alone. You are simply being encouraged to turn inward and reconnect with a wisdom that has always existed inside you. Something powerful is awakening now. It has always been present, but it is finally becoming impossible to ignore. It is your intuition. It is your inner knowing. It is that part of you capable of recognizing truth before evidence appears. You may notice yourself trusting your instincts more than before. You may notice an increased ability to sense what belongs in your life and what does not. Decisions that once required endless analysis may suddenly feel obvious. Awareness may arrive faster than explanation. This is not a new ability. It is a forgotten one returning to the surface. The more this awakening continues, the less dependent you become on external approval and external direction. You begin moving from seeking answers to recognizing them, from searching for certainty to embodying it, from questioning yourself to understanding yourself. Along the way, certain structures within your life may begin falling away. Situations that appeared permanent may suddenly shift. Connections you believed would remain forever may complete their purpose. Plans you once depended upon may change direction. These experiences can feel intense because they challenge expectations, yet what is being removed is not being removed without reason. Anything incapable of supporting the person you are becoming must eventually dissolve. Life is not tearing things away to create suffering. It is creating freedom. It is clearing obstacles that your conscious mind may never have chosen to remove on its own. It is opening pathways that could not be accessed while old structures remained in place. Eventually you will look back and understand why certain things could not continue. You will see how their departure created room for something far more aligned. Another shift is approaching as well. The doubt that once followed you so closely is beginning to lose its influence. Not because every challenge disappears, but because your relationship with yourself is changing. You are beginning to recognize your resilience. You are beginning to see how many times you continued forward despite uncertainty. You are beginning to understand your own strength rather than merely hoping it exists. This awareness transforms everything. Doubt becomes weaker when it is no longer mistaken for truth. Confidence emerges not from guarantees, but from experience. You start trusting your own direction. You start honoring your own wisdom. You stop waiting for permission from the world around you. Stability begins growing from within rather than depending on external circumstances. And from that place, movement becomes natural. As the pieces continue arranging themselves, a deeper sense of harmony begins to emerge. Nothing feels forced. Nothing feels rushed. Instead, events seem to unfold with a natural rhythm that cannot be manufactured. This is the experience of true alignment. It feels as though life itself is cooperating with your growth. Unexpected connections appear. Meaningful coincidences occur with astonishing precision. Opportunities emerge exactly when you are ready to receive them. Answers arrive at the moment they are needed most. These experiences reveal something important. You are not wandering aimlessly through existence. You are participating in a larger unfolding. You are moving in step with a deeper intelligence that has been guiding you all along. And when you finally recognize that truth, you understand that the confirmation you have been searching for was never somewhere far away. It has been revealing itself through every lesson, every ending, every awakening, and every step that brought you to this moment.